In 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the Big 1050.com. We got Ira in studio. We got the MGoBlog duo this morning of Seth Fisher and Craig Ross in their
Morning.
respective studios. And I'm in Atlanta, part of the week-long trek that started in Baltimore, went to Mobile, then to Pensacola, now to Atlanta. Gonna finish up in Texas. So, man, it's a sort of a reflection as they had a great spring, bringing guys on campus to kind of go now and check back in with some of those top guys that made it in over the spring. So, fellas, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good, man. I've been remembering a recruitment from last year when I'm doing the Shamari Earls write up right now for our annual recruiting profiles, where I go through the whole class over the summer. And so I'm going through the articles, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when like Sam was telling us, yeah, man, Michigan's going to get this guy. He was like committed to South Carolina at the time. I'm like, yeah, right, like Raylan Wilson. Okay, Georgia wants a guy, Georgia gets a guy, and then like. Sam's like, no, he might, because he was committed to Georgia. And then Sam's like, no, he's going to come and visit. And I'm like, dude, no way. Like Isaiah Wilson, right? Like this happens. And then all of a sudden, I go to Sam's tailgate. And there he's got Shamari Earls up on stage with Andrew Marsh. And I'm like, oh, this might happen. So it's Michigan recruiting. It's kind of fun to cover when, there's a 5-star that Michigan doesn't have. Like Will Johnson was a 5-star on that level. But Will Johnson, like, we were going to move heaven and earth to get that guy, and that was a legacy, right?
Hey,
that's Deion Johnson's son,
Hey,
and
dude,
we're really
yeah,
having trouble with that.
he was really looking hard at USC, and he was on the verge of Ohio State. So I remember the call he had with Jim Harbaugh, where Jim was like, "I'm not going anywhere. Just don't commit. I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be at Michigan." And that was enough to get him to pump the brakes. So that's how, like, man, things could have gone another way.
Dude, imagine Will Johnson goes to Ohio State, like that's it, right? Like I like the hurt that would be. Anyway, nowadays we're like, oh yeah, Shamari Earls, we won that recruitment over Georgia, and they didn't replace him. It's not like Georgia went and got another cornerback; they didn't.
Yeah.
So.
It was about time because, man, Georgia had been beating Michigan for corners like a drum. I mean, like big time corner. Every corner Michigan was on, it seemed like Georgia, like they had a good shot at. Like you felt like they were going to get them. They were going to Georgia. So
yeah,
this was just the latest.
We got DJ Turner. I know that Georgia was like, go ahead, but we were like, we will, we shall, and then we made that guy a second rounder. So Georgia,
And it was dude who told me he was gonna be a guy was Ray Buchanan from all pro corner was his trainer. Yeah. He's like, hey, DJ Turner's gonna be a player. It's like he's better than all these people saying.
He was an argument between Brian and me because I wrote up the hello and then Brian did the recruiting profile that year, and I loved him. I was like, this guy can play because I was watching him. We went to IMG for a bit and he was playing there, and so you got to see him against some really good players, and usually that's the best way to tell is like see IMG film against Aquinas or something like that. That's how you can tell a guy. And like I was getting excited, and Brian's like, dude, this guy's Brandon Watson, he can't run. We'll see.
Yeah, with the camera. So fellas, let's start off when you talk about you want to see guys against really, really good competition, or in really, really challenging scenarios where you can really truly evaluate them. Well, Yaxel Lindenborg is in combine action, getting evaluated, and it was one of those deals where a lot of folks had already written him off, saying, he's not coming to Michigan, including my man Tim McCormick. He's like, hey, I'm just not getting my hopes up, Sam. Yeah. He said, I'm not getting my hopes up, Sam, but I don't know about you guys. Even though he reportedly looked good, and there's some intrigue at that level, and I've seen him be mocked in the late first round in several mocks. Some of his commentary making it sound like it's not a foregone conclusion. So I think it's not just, I came away feeling like it's not as dire. It doesn't mean that he's leaning this way. I don't feel like it's as dire as it seemed, or as a lot of folks seem to think it was. I'm curious what you guys think.
Yeah, it's he's kind of ranking. We're watching the mocks like
Had it
crazy
as
this
a
year, and yeah, they're putting him in kind of that high second round area where guys do get guaranteed contracts. The other thing about the high second round, though, is remember those are the same teams who are picking at the high first round.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why they're picking at the top of the first round is because those franchises are not somewhere you really want to play, right? Like those are the franchises, apologies to certain friends of mine, but Phoenix is kind of a mess right now, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when I see him mock there, I'm like, well, if that's the only teams that are going to promise to get him, then Michigan actually does kind of look like a good option. Like the money's going to be the same, right? We're assuming that Michigan's not going to have, it's not going to be a money question. And obviously, I don't know if anyone saw this interview he had, but where they asked him, like, hey, where are you feeling right now? And he kind of 60-40, and then they press a little bit, and he's like, okay, Michigan's the 60, right? And
Mm-hmm.
when you watch it, as
See?
a Michigan fan, you're like, ooh, he likes Michigan. He likes it. Like this is not a guy who's like, this is not a fallback plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like waiting to see if the NBA is going to match what Michigan offered, not the other way around, which
Mm-hmm.
is very interesting to me. Like that tells me that the NBA is going to have to come up with something. Now, will the NBA come up with something? Very possibly they will, because low second round can very quickly turn to late first round. And late first round, those are franchises that you really want to play for. So he could get a really good guaranteed offer from a really good franchise, and it's going to be hard to turn something like that down.
Yeah, man. Listen, Craig. I mean, he laid that out before. He said, "I just want a guarantee." But Dusty laid out his sort of competitive. Like we second round money, we can beat that. We beat
Yeah.
second round money. So come do what we just did with. Obviously, you saw what we did with Area 51. You come over here for a year, improve your stock, and you aren't asking, hey, will I get a guarantee? You'll definitely be in that range. You come and you do what what we just did last year. You come and get developed like we just developed our guys last year. So again, not to say that he's definitely coming, but 60-40, he later came back and said it's more like 50-50 based on
Yeah.
how things are going. So he came off of it some, but still, that's still better
And
than a lot of people are saying.
he doesn't want to scare off the teams either. But if Celtics come to you and say, "Hey, man, we see you as a guy that we can develop. We're going to give you a guaranteed contract," dude, like some offers are really good, right?
Yeah, I think a lot depends how he plays, and how out of that teams perceive him. If he's likely to go in at the end of the first round, I think he's gone because he'll be playing with a team that is good for him, and he'll get money. If he goes into the second round, he'll be playing with a crappy team, and Michigan can match the money. I think that's what it comes down to. I think 50-50 is probably the legitimate place to be. I mean, I know Tim thought it was 80-20, and he knows more about this than any of us, and because he talks to NBA people. So I might out of that put it at 60-40. He ends up in the NBA. I know that Dusty has contingencies. I know there are other guys he's looking at, and we'd all, obviously we'd love to have Yaxel because I think that probably puts Michigan as a top 10 team next year, at least in terms of talent. In basketball, everything is synergy, and how guys fit together and play together is something that's hard to see or understand until you actually see them play together. But even without Yaxel, I think Michigan's going to have a good team next year. I think they've got shooting. I think they've got a true point guard. Uh, they've got guys who can play the wing, and they can play with four guards if they need to. But they do have two centers. So to me, basketball looks really good, and it'll be good. It'll be great if they get Yaxel, and it'll be good if they, are very good if they don't.
Man, if he comes, I think he's Danny Wolf. I think he's
Yeah.
he's Danny Wolf. He's John Tanji. Impact. Like
Yeah.
you know, that's what he is. And you know, Steve Horn and the Utah Jazz is he's Big Ten Player of the Year. I don't think that's
That's not crazy. Yeah.
That's not crazy at all. I think he definitely would.
I mean, Purdue's got their guard back, but
I think he would come in and absolutely be one of the top 2 or 3 guys in this league. So, you know, again, you don't want to set yourself up for disappointment. But Dusty said, these are the waters we're going to swim in. I'm going to shoot my shot with the best talent out there. And the best talent is going to be testing itself in the draft. I'm not going to shy away from that. I'll have my contingency plan, as you pointed out. But this already, to me, is sounding better at the combine than I anticipated it sounding. Because he's been, if you looked at his previous, so prior to him taking his official visit to Michigan, if you read his interviews, it was like, I want to go to the NBA, period. NBA. That's what I want to do. That's where I want to be. It's like, and he made it clear that college was a fallback. I think that's part of what is coloring the perception. But it's noteworthy that he's talking like this after he's been. And I think it impacted him like, hey, man, I think he's feeling like it's not just, to your point, Seth, I think he's feeling like it's not just a fallback anymore. Between the money and being around, it's like, hey, man, this could actually be a lot better than maybe he was originally thinking it was going to be, which was a fallback plan.
It's also a little bit of marketing, right? If you're in the NBA combine and you're talking to different teams, they want to know, are you committed to going to the NBA? They want to know, are we going to have another shot at you? They want to know, right? They want to know what they're up against.
True.
So the look probably told me more than the percentage. The percentage is because is a big unknown. He doesn't know what they're going to offer, right? And like if he's blowing up the combine and he falls, up into the top of the first round, he could get a really good offer. And that's part of the rules here, right? Like, but that's from a, like you said, with the, from the Forest perspective, right? This is the kind of thing we should look forward to every year, because this is the way that you could get a player who's at that level, and not, Gaxel's going to be one, and then there might be another, and if we win 20% of these, right? Sometimes you're going to have a National Player of the Year on your team because he's going to be the best player who's not in the NBA. And that's what we're going for here. And that's a fantastic way to look at the era that we're talking about now in basketball, where you're remaking your teams all the time. If you have the best player in the world who's not in the NBA, you could win a national championship. And this is the way to get them.
It sure is. It sure is. So keep doing what you do, Dusty May, and hopefully we'll get some good luck and have another outstanding contribution, or a few contributions from the portal. So looking forward to that. Thought that was some noteworthy news. The last time I was on with you guys, you had some, and I don't know if we can get into it because I know Brian wanted to get into it when he was here, feeling like there was some hockey news that was trending positively for Michigan at this point.
Hockey is difficult. As people recall, last year, I think I mentioned this before, in the spring, or not in the spring, at the end of this year's season, Dorado said, what happened last year will never, ever, 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 almost exactly those words, happen again. And what happened was he had a bunch of guys who were top talents, National Hockey League talents, who said they were staying, and none of them did, not one. And so he ended up feeling like he was rope-a-doped, because by the time he knew what was coming down, the cupboard was pretty bare. And so I think this year he's not letting that happen. I mean, they didn't have that level of talent, but they're not letting that happen. And the program hasn't announced anything yet. However,
did we lose Craig? Did Craig just get?
Yeah.
Oh, you said, however, we lost you.
I'm sorry. The internet here. What's been leaked is there's a kid named Henry Muse, who is will play the quarter as a defenseman, will play the quarterback on the power play.
Yeah, I think his internet's doing a little badly. What
Sorry,
did just happen this
guys.
week? Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
I just picked up from where you're going. Michigan got Erie's Malcolm Spence, who's like a mid-first rounder. That was one of the
Yes.
spots that we were predicting they were going to get. They still so they're waiting for the CHL's playoffs to kind of to roll through, and as teams fall out, that's when those guys become available. So you can kind of we're waiting for Gavin McKenna, but he's still playing, right?
Yeah,
Gavin McKenna is going to be, but like everyone kind of feels like that's happening now, and. And like we can't you can't just be like, yes, that is absolutely happening. And
okay, so wait,
yeah.
so you got a some of the audience. I went to the gym the other day. One of my trainers was like, "Hey, Gavin's." So there's a definite Michigan hockey crowd who knows who you're talking about, but there's a contingent out here who doesn't. So explain to them the significance.
Gavin McKenna is not just going to be the first overall draft pick in the upcoming NHL draft. He's going to be just one notch under Sidney Crosby. As like, the teams last year were talking about jockeying to be the worst team in the NHL so you could get Gavin McKenna. So that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a legendary talent, obvious one and done, because he can't be drafted until next year, right? As soon as he's drafted, he's in the NHL. Generational player who then we get to sit and watch his entire NHL career and be like, that guy went to Michigan. So up until recently, a guy like that would always just play in the CHL, which is the Canadian Juniors. Recently, the NCAA, because now we're paying players anyway, there's no barrier anymore to getting CHL players who make fairly low wages, wages that Michigan hockey would be able to match, right? And they live in towns, I don't want to make fun of Ontario towns. They're actually very nice towns, but they're small towns. And it's not as nice as living in Ann Arbor. They also play very long seasons. So for a top draft pick, a guy who's obviously going to be number 1, number 2, number 3, those kinds of top draftables, they are they don't have a lot more to prove in the CHL. The level of play is below the level of play in the Big Ten today. Also, they play so many games. You're going to get injured. You're going to get beat up. You have a long playoff. And that's going to, not necessarily damage your long-term career, but it's just playing a lot more hockey you don't have to play when you could be working on a degree, having a future, building more connections who are going to help you your entire career, right? And Michigan has an in because this guy's father, this guy's agent is the father of a former Michigan hockey player, a recent Michigan hockey player. So we have a deep connection with him. So if he's going to college, people assume it's Michigan. Now, other schools are going to step up, right? Every college hockey team that's got any money, and all the Big Ten schools have money, Boston University, all those schools anyone who can get through is going to talk to him and offer him something. And Michigan might not even have the best financial package for him to come. But as far as the excitement on campus, all year, they're going to be talking about this guy because the NHL is going to be focusing on him and wanting to see. And Yost is going to be the place where the best player who's not in the NHL is playing next year. That's what Gavin McKenna would mean.
All right, Craig, we got your back. Want to give you the opportunity to see if you're back?
Well, I mean, I obviously agree about McKenna. He's, the best player in the draft probably. And, but the kids they seem to have brought in, again, put Michigan in a pretty good spot. Especially I think Henry Neal changed the team a lot. He's a very good offensive defenseman, and just a question of how well he plays defense. What's the kid you mentioned? The Spear, is that his name? Or God, he's a 200-foot player, and so they're putting themselves in a good spot. They do need goalies. Rumor is they've got a guy, Ivanovic, I think is his name.
Ivankovic, yeah. So
Ivankovic, yeah.
Yeah, so
But
this
they'll need
comes
3
from Gabe
goalies because they
Foley.
got none right now. Yeah.
Yeah, this comes from Gabe Foley, who said that Michigan has a commitment from a top 50 goalie, quote, top 50 goalie. There's only one in the draft. So that's how he figured out he was talking about Ivankovic.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And so there's that. But, you know, my guess is we won't really know until August, because that's what hockey seems to be. Everything tends to be rumor in the hockey world, and then all of a sudden, oh, here's our team.
All right. Well, look, it certainly seems like, it feels like the momentum, the Bryce Underwood momentum is kind of switching over to hockey there. So, you know, fingers crossed, knock on wood, whatever you do superstition wise to make things happen, keep doing it, because it feels like it's kind of working over on the hockey side now too. We need to get to a break. Be back on the other side. More MGoBlog Roundtable here
Alabama.
On the Michigan Insider on the big thing. You down there with old Nick Saban. You know, Nick is trying to bring presidential intervention to this whole college athletics question. So we'll see if he has some Nick has some influence there. Time will tell. You down in Nick's neck of the woods there. Maybe you could do some stuff.
I am.
We got to get to a break. Be back on the other side here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at thebig1050.com.
And we
Sorry,
are clear.
guys.
I'm pretty sure it's okay, Craig. It happens. Alabama's shaky internet. I heard that Nick Saban actually said, "I don't know what the commission's really about."
Oh,
and he doesn't think it's necessary. So there you go.
Well, the presidential commissions happen all the time. You know, like this is. I know people are like, "Oh God," they say presidential. I'm like, "Oh no, they're going to talk politics." Everyone relax. There isn't any politics in this. Okay, presidential commissions happen all the time. Blue ribbons commissions happen all the time. Usually what they do is they create recommendations. That recommendation can become part of an executive order. I would not guess that is going to be an effective use of this one, just because if you make an executive order, it's not going to last, right? Like they would have to survive to the next administration, and you know this administration can only last so long. So that way of doing it is probably not going to be the best way. It could create, but it can lead to legislation, and legislation could last. And I think that there is possibly enough impetus now to create some sort of legislation. Now it's going to matter who they put on the Blue Ribbon Commission, and Nick Saban is a guy who'd probably end up on the commission regardless, right? He's the one guy in the country who everyone knows football and is not coaching football right now. So, yeah, I mean, that guy's the lead ball knower of the country right now. Nick Saban's going to be on the commission. The rest of it, you know, the more political it gets, the less I think it's going to be something you need to pay attention to. I do think that they have an opportunity now to actually bring people to the table and come up with some recommendations. And that's really what they need, because there's a lot of people at the table, and the way this has been happening lately is through the courts. And that's not a very functional way of doing it, except for the House legislation, which we thought it was going to be finalized this week, by the way. House is not finalized. They didn't get to it this week. So we still get to wait. And there are big things up in the air. For example, the 105 person limit on the rosters, right? They already went implementing that. Schools are already preparing for that. And then all of a sudden the judge said, no, that's not fair. You can't do that.
No, it wasn't all of a sudden on her part though. She said, wait a minute. Yeah. Why are you, this is not in line with the parameters that I set.
Right.
Just because you decided that you want to, and some teams have already started doing it, sucks to be you. You should have basically been following my guidelines here. Clearly you weren't. Mm-hmm. So she seems to be saying that the instructions weren't being followed appropriately. At least that's my impression.
Yeah.
You know, so
I mean, I'm trying to keep up with this from the side, and like that's anyway. Now that that's not decided, it's like, well, what do you want us to do? Like, invite all the walk-ons back? Like, these guys, they've already making their rosters, right? Everyone's already been preparing for this, so it's a
yes, that's a tough
I
one.
would like to have had this done just so we can kind of report it and have an article about it in the book that we're putting together for this year, and like that would have been nice to have, but more time on that.
Yeah, they were supposed to, or they were aiming to have this in place by July. But the walk-on thing, I don't know how it's actually going to work. I mean, the all the walk-ons that lost their positions, the remedy that was proposed is that they could go wherever, go anywhere in the country. They could be on their current teams and not count against the scholarship, not count against the scholarship, or go anywhere and not count against the scholarship number. So they would be fine, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee them that they're going to get the same level of opportunity. So
yeah. The going down to 105 people on the football teams, that you don't need 100 people to play a football game. You do need them for scout teams. You do need them to have a spring game, and like to have the depth that you want to have in order to create a scout team, right? The way that we've been doing it for years. And there's always been a class of player who's willing to do that for no scholarship.
All right, guys, we're coming back in about 10 seconds. Stand by.
So it's kind of sad that those guys don't get to be part of the team anymore. And I think that should be something that they allow, right?
We'll get Craig back in a second. We're back in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at thebig1050.com. Before we get back to the roundtable, wanted to let those of you who are in the market for a new vehicle know you should get on board with Brighton Ford. Why? Well, folks, Brighton Ford is the ultimate destination for your new car or truck. You can head right in and settle into the seat of your favorite vehicle, get in, take control, and drive off the lot in the car or truck that was meant for you. Go to Brighton Ford, call 1-800-NEW-FORD, or go online at BrightonFord.com and take advantage of employee pricing. From now through May 31st, well-qualified lessees can lease a 2025 Ford F-150 for as low as $257 a month. With only $3,500 down, that's plus first payment, taxes, doc fee, title, license, and state fees due at signing, security deposit waive, 7,500 miles per year, 24-month lease. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD or see dealer for full details. Again, call 1-800-NEW-FORD today. Employee pricing means you pay what we pay. Brighton Ford, the official Ford sponsor of the Big 1050 WTKA. Guys, you look around and you see the different movement. We pay hyper attention, hyper focus to Michigan. But there was the article on ESPN that talked about Jim Knowles' departure from Ohio State to Penn State, which as articles like that go, I found pretty revealing. He actually opened up a bit and uttered some things that I actually been hearing, like coaching staff wise, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, and he basically got tired of dealing with it. So they won the championship. He got the heck on out of Dodge, which was, I said, man, look at Chip Knowles kind of opening up. I don't know that he's going to make it. I don't think he's going to make a big difference at Penn State, but he lifted the veil a little bit on what was going on down there, at least staff-wise, down there in Columbus.
Listen, man, every school has. I love this about college football, that everyone's got their own way of doing things, right? There's a different culture everywhere you go, and I think Michigan's culture is a benefit to them, right? That like the guys want to come play here, that you feel like you're part of everyone says they're part of a family and whatnot, right? But Michigan's got a very good culture of a certain type of person who comes and plays here. And Ohio State does too. And they won the national championship because of that culture. Now that culture is, you come here, no one is going to like you. That's the point. If you go to Ohio State, you are going to be hated. Your fans, in particular, are going to hate your guts. Your teammates are going to hate your guts. Everybody is going to. It's going to be this pressure cooker, where you have to expect that you're going to get lots and lots of criticism. Now, you can do anything, and you can do lots of jobs that get a lot of criticism, right? If you talk about politics on the radio, people are going to email you with criticism. I know this, and and some people are good at dealing with that and having a lot of criticism. And you're going to get a lot more people sometimes who are going to be very happy that you talk politics, and then a lot of people are like, not everyone is every fan base is the same. Not every single place is the same. Ohio State is a place where you're going to get more of those nasty emails, and you're going to get it inside inside the house. Ryan Day is going to be critical of you, and the fans are going to be critical of you. And when you have successes, all you've done is it's just okay. Right. And sometimes that makes very successful people. I know very successful people with very, very terrible parents, because those parents were tyrants and they made them feel like anything you do is not going to be good enough. Now, those people need lots of therapy. And I think that anyone who goes to Ohio State should get therapy afterwards, because I think that's a terrible thing to do to a human brain. But it does get results. And Ohio State can show you they've gone out and did they win it? No, they didn't win the Big Ten. Had they beaten? No, they didn't beat Michigan, but they won the national championship. Now they had to get like a really nice draw, and they had to make it right. Like it was a weird national championship that like they came into as number 8 or whatever, but it gets results. Now, if you want to become the best version of yourself by destroying yourself and then getting therapy and fixing yourself afterwards, Ohio State is the place for you. If you want to live like a human being and also try to be the best version of yourself, maybe you could try Michigan or Penn State or Notre Dame. There are a lot of other good places you can be that do not function that way, but some people thrive that way, and more power to them.
Well, listen.
Well, everything has some element of political. And I mean, it's hard to pull something out and just say, oh, that's political, that's not political. Santa Ono goes to Florida. It's something we got to talk about, and it is a priori political. And you cannot pull the politics out of it, whether you're talking on sports talk radio or anything else. Let me give you a small example this week, and I applaud the city of Ann Arbor for this. There's 2 houses in Ann Arbor that have been saved. One of them was the place where Arthur Miller lived, a very political guy who wrote The Crucible, for example, and was highly involved in the Willis Ward events here in the 30s. And someone decided, we should save Arthur Miller's house. And they are. They may have to move it. Same for Raoul Wallenberg. I assume people know about Raoul Wallenberg, who was a student here in the 30s, saved who knows how many Hungarian Jews. Estimates are, in the tens of thousands or more, died in in either Lubyanka or a Soviet gulag for bizarre reasons. But that's political. But those politics have been preserved by the city of Ann Arbor for good reasons, and his house also is going to be saved. So trying to, last week's show, I felt bad about it to some extent, but to another extent, I said, part of sports is political. NIL is political. Paying players, political. It's, we're all always talking about stuff that has elements of the political, and what it comes down to is, are those politics you agree with or not? If you agree with those politics, well, it's not so political. If you don't agree with the politics, that's political. I don't want to listen to that.
I hear you, Craig. And listen, you're absolutely right. There's no way to avoid politics, especially when politics just become values. But what we've done, I think, a very good job of at MGoBlog and on this show in the past. Now, sometimes we have no choice, right? Sometimes we're talking about direct public policy, proposed or advanced by a certain party, and there's just no way involved. But there's a way to talk about things in the terms of values, and that's what I've always tried to focus on. We could talk about the values and the ideas without necessarily putting a partisan spent on it. Now, obviously, people are going to see it sometimes, but I can tell you this fan base has had the conversation for years over whether we should pay players or not. And what are we talking about? Economic systems. Are economic systems part of our political discussion in America? Absolutely. Do people fall into those economic systems when they start talking about this issue? Absolutely not. When we talk about the ideas and values, sometimes we don't have to have the conversation in terms of which party either of us belong to. We can have the conversation in terms of ideas. And I think that's always served us well. And I think that's always served the audience well as well.
Yeah, I think we have the discussion, or had the discussion, because you have to. I don't think you have the discussion with the belief, with the expectation that the exchange of ideas, that discourse, is going to move the meter in any way, shape, or form. I think it was more obligatory because it's the topic and we have an obligation to discuss it. But you talk about the exchange of ideas, even on ideas that we disagree on outside of politics. We can have a discussion, and you might not convince someone that your position is the right point of view, but you can make them think. When you talk about politics, at least in this day and age, it's about identity. It's not what do you believe, it's about who you are. That's how a lot of people are approaching politics these days. So when politics are who you are, you're not going to be convincing people of a point of view when believing your point of view upsets who they are. Yeah. So I don't have that expectation when we have these kinds of discussions. I talk about it or entertain the discussion because, look, it's what happened. President left. Definitely want to make it clear that he didn't leave. He didn't leave because of football. He didn't leave because of the NCAA, Joel Klatt, right? Had nothing to do with that. There was some political. There was a highly politicized environment that had some decisions, polarizing decisions that helped influence at least his frame of mind. I'm not saying that money didn't have anything to do with it too. It did, but politics did as well. Now, whether people want to believe that was, I guess, more to combat some of the narratives that were out there.
I know. And you know what? We hear from the people who are speaking probably more from that identity standpoint. I do not agree that everybody functions solely as in identity politics. It's definitely increased. But there's enough of an audience, especially our audience, especially the MGoBlog audience, just from my interactions with them over many years. I do believe that a lot of people are very open to having conversations about ideas. And I think that, you know, I agree with you, Sam. We did not have a choice to dip into the identity politics of because that was the nature of what was going on at that moment. But the idea that we avoid talking politics is wrong. We do talk politics all the time. We just usually don't put it in those terms because those terms are not going to be useful for having a conversation of ideas. Now, when we put it in terms of ideas and what policies we should have and where they should come from and how we should modify ideas and try to come to a synthesis of ideas, then we actually have a really positive conversation sometimes. And like I said, there's a lot of people who you know, if you want to put a term on how they want to approach player compensation, right? The term would not be capitalist. Okay, that's not the word that you would use for it.
Yeah,
but we all have certain values that we share, and this is where I want to get to. Even when we're disagreeing on the ideas, a lot of times we can, if we're trying. Everyone's got to be trying, and there's a lot of bad faith. And what you're talking about there, with with identity and whatnot, people having conversation with this in bad faith. Let's ignore the people trying to have this conversation in bad faith. Let's try to ignore the people who are trying to knock us off our conversation and try to talk to each other about those values that inform the ideas, because that's where we can actually agree. And then we can build off of that. And I think that's when you want to talk about like where we have these conversations and where we can actually affect people. Start with our values and move on from there.
I think it sounds great, Seth. I think it sounds great.
Yeah.
Definitely the ideal is great. Yeah. Is it practical? We actually see it be something. I'm just looking at the comments that we were receiving coming off of last week's show.
Listen, we're not going to get everybody. We're not, maybe not even a majority of people. But I'm speaking as someone who does love having those conversations. We are political animals. We are people who like to talk about other people and what we do. And I would love having those conversations personally. And I'm telling you, anyone who wants to have a conversation about ideas, I'm very open to it.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm very open to people disagreeing with me, and that's fine. You know, you take it or leave it. I guess that's where I am. I don't expect everyone to agree. I don't expect everyone to like me. I think that was Brian's stance last week. If I could speak for him just a little bit, I think he would say he made his comments because he didn't care who liked it and who didn't, who liked it and who didn't. So, thus he was very pointed with his commentary last week, hilariously so. But you know, it is what it is. It was a topic. I did want to get your thoughts. I mentioned that Ohio State article there really quick. Then the pendulum of expectation seems to have swung in the direction of Penn State. Is it by virtue merely of Jim Knowles' departure to Happy Valley? Do we think it's going to have that much of an effect on the fortunes down there? Because I still think it all rests on the volatility of the quarterback and the head coach, and I don't think either of those have changed.
Yeah, are you talking long term? You talk about next year.
Next year.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State run me out. Keep in mind, this analysis is very surface level, right? When you talk about who's ranking who and whatever, right? Surface level analysis. They're looking at teams that have a returning quarterback. Penn State has a multi-year starter coming back. They look at teams who were in the playoff last year. Penn State was in the playoff and went far last year. So right now, Penn State is high. Everything gets mixed up as soon as you get on the football field. But I'm not paying that much attention to it because honestly, how is the Big Ten going to work out? They give 18 teams. No one's playing, even schedules. So it's almost you look at I almost have to look at who's got an easier schedule. Penn State had an easy schedule last year. That's why everyone was picking them at the top of the Big Ten.
Exactly.
Right?
And that was a reason. That was a reason to pick. I mean, they made playoffs because they had an easier schedule. No doubt.
Exactly. So and that's it's even more so this year. There's a half of the Big Ten that's playing each other, like the lower half and the upper half, and then two of these teams are going to play each other for something. It's not it's not going to matter. Like the teams that get to the end of the season who played the best season are not even necessarily going to be the 12 teams that make the playoff. So the system that we have now for choosing a participants in the Big Ten championship and participants in the playoff is so broken that I honestly don't care anymore about anybody but Michigan. Because if I look any further than the teams right in front of us, the teams on our schedule, everything just becomes too unknowable. And it's made me turn off. I don't want to watch the rest of college. I used to love college football, couldn't wait till it gets on. And now because everything's so dumb and you're going to end up seeing these teams play again in a non-college stadium anyway, that's really it's damaged my college football fandom. I'm really kind of become much less of a college football fan and more just a plain Michigan fan now because I can't see how it all fits together anymore.
Yeah, it's I guess the minutia of looking into all the teams. Penn State is rather easy though for the reasons that you mentioned. They return, who the faces are. They got Jim Knowles. And it still boils down to your head coach who can't get out of his spring game without getting into it with his own crowd. And then Drew Aller, do you believe that he's really the number one pick in the draft, the best quarterback in the country, which is the conversation that the Klatts of the world are having? I'm like, you haven't seen enough yet to know that dude doesn't have it? They're going to crash and burn. They're going to crash and burn.
I'm with you, 100% with you, Sam. I don't get it. He's an okay quarterback, but he's not a top of the college football heap quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. And my guess is even the guy at Ohio State will be perceived as better by midway through the season. What's his name?
Which guy at Ohio State?
Whichever guy. Well,
Yeah.
whichever guy. And so I'm not a believer. Joel Klatt is okay, but I'm not a believer in Penn State at all. And I'm especially not a believer in their quarterback play. So, and that team seems to be the definition and has been of a dysfunctional family. And they have been for some time, which, swinging it back to Michigan and Michigan softball, for example. They had a hard year. Yeah, they had a hard year, but they also seem to be a team that's very tight, and the kids on that team seem to be connected in a way that's tangible, and that's a team that certainly could have given up this year, losing a lot to good teams, but they did not, and so part of, I think, what Seth was saying before is there. How do you feel as a team? How do you feel as a program? How do you feel as a university? Are you cohesive?
Yeah.
And
all right,
wrap
that's gonna do it for us this week, folks. We'll see you tomorrow, or today anyway. We'll see you tomorrow here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the Big 1050.